I'll be showing how to build a bot from scratch and what you could accomplish with about 10 minutes in our platform. So I provisioned myself a brand new fresh bot, but before I could really start building anything, I'm going to ingest some data. And so I'll do this in two ways. The first way is through an automated web crawl of FAQs. Now I'll be creating an e-commerce tire virtual assistant, so I'll be using the Michelin site's public FAQs. So here's the page that I'm going to be basically extracting from. I'm just going to copy and paste the URL, go to my knowledge Q&A section and paste the URL in, and wait about 5 seconds or so for the extraction to complete. And here are the results. And so about 141 pairs have been found. I'm only going to actually import 130 because 11 of them are of poor quality, at least to our self-evaluation. And so before I move on, I'm just going to select all of these and promote these to basically official Q&A pairs for the bot to use. All right, so with the FAQs crawled and extracted, I'm going to show you the second way, which is with PDF documents. And so I actually just downloaded the owner's manual PDF, which is right over here on their site after a little bit of digging. It's about 30 pages. I downloaded it, and all I need to do is just upload it into the platform. So this takes a bit of time to upload and then, of course, to process. And so once it's done uploading, all I need to do is click on the Update Now button. That will start the processing of the document. And so processing, it scales up linearly with the size of the file. This should probably take about 3 to 5 minutes. And so I'm just going to leave it as is for now, and I'll get straight into the flow editor here. And so before I start testing this bot, I just want to build out a couple flows or these multi-round intents and then deploy it out onto production. So here's our studio flow editor, and I'm going to use this drag and drop environment to build out a flow. And so I'm going to create one called Looking for Tires. So I just click on the Add Flow button, then name it Looking for Tires. Collapse that. And so for Looking for Tires, I'm going to add some training data on how customers would express this intent. And so for now, I'll just add a couple ad hoc. And so I can do, can you help me get new tires? And then let's do, I'm looking for tires. Okay. And in this flow, I'm going to be collecting 3 bits of information from the customer. Year, make, and model. And then after that, I'm going to present them tire results that fit their vehicle. So in the design here, I'm basically declaring variables to be collected. I give them names, and so I'm going to call this one year, and I'm going to select an entity type vehicle year for this variable. And I just do this for the next 2 for the vehicle make and then for the vehicle model. And so for all of these variables, you select an entity type for them, and we have a list of pre-built system entity types. When I first drag and drop this action node, there's actually no code here. This allows you to write code ad hoc. You can make API calls using request libraries on Node.js, but I actually have one already pre-built just to save some time, imported into this bot. And it's called Get and Display Tires for Vehicle. The inputs are year, make, and model of that vehicle. And then just to show what's under the hood, this is the JavaScript code of making the API calls and then formatting the results to present back to the user. And so that's it for Looking for Tires. So I'm going to create one last flow, and it's for the case where a customer wants to ask for a human agent. And so I'll create a new flow called Handoff to an Agent. And in here, I'll add a question to confirm that they want to escalate. And in the case where they say yes, I'll actually have an escalation happen. And I just drag and drop this escalate node, and I select the Salesforce chat channel among the pre-built integrations that we have. And so how it knows which Salesforce instance to connect to, I actually had to go to the escalation page here and just fill out some fields to connect to my particular sandbox. And one thing I need to add is at least one training data to trigger this handoff to an agent flow. And so I'm just going to have talk to a human. All right, now I'm going to test my virtual assistant. And so I can do that by going to the bottom right, clicking on this widget here, and then here's the bot. And so I'm just going to tell it that I want to find some tires for my car. And here, even though I only have 2 training data entries, our model was still confident enough to trigger the looking for tires flow. I'm in the middle of this intent or context, but I'm actually going to go off topic and switch contexts. So I'm going to ask to talk to an agent. And so our NLU and dialog manager is able to trigger this flow I just created. The blurb here, let's say, makes me want to change my mind, so I'll say no. And then the dialog manager brings me back to where I left off with finding tires. Something to note is that when I designed these 2 flows, I never created any explicit linkages between them. And so in either of these flows, I don't have branches that branch off to either flow, to the different flow. Now, these are only 2 flows, but imagine a virtual assistant with dozens of intents. And if there needed to be a master decision tree for all of the different permutations of switching during the middle of each intent, the building process would be unscalable. All right, so let's finish out my testing. I will say Ford Fusion. And actually, I provided only 2 of the expected variables, but the dialog manager is able to generate language to ask for the remaining 1. And so as a designer, I didn't have to do anything to account for this scenario. I'll play ball, give it 2019. And here are the results from the API call from that action node earlier, right over here. And the customer can view and kind of click on any of these. And so before I move on to the ingested data, I want to actually go through with testing the handoff. So I'll trigger it again. And I'll say yes to start the handoff. And so you'll hear a sound. This is actually coming from the Salesforce instance. So I'm actually going to accept it as the agent. Here we go. It's opened up. And actually the chat transcript from between the bot and the end user is passed through. And as an agent, I can start chatting. Of course, the customer can reply back. All right, so the escalation looks fine. So I'm just going to end it. And so now I want to test out how the FAQs look like, the ones that were crawled earlier. And so I can ask it a couple questions. Let's say, when should I replace my tires? And so in this case, it didn't trigger a single Q&A. It actually is disambiguating, as there are many FAQs that were extracted and only 1 training data for each one of them. And so there's just not enough information for our system to confidently trigger just 1. And so it wants to disambiguate here. And so the second one looks like the right one for me. And then here's the answer. This looks about right. And there's also a link to the direct page where it was extracted from. And so let's ask it one more question, like, can I use winter tires anytime? And so in this case, only a single FAQ is provided. There's no disambiguation, and this seems to be the answer that I was looking for. And so for the PDF we ingested, I can ask it a question that the Q&As don't cover, and also that my flows don't cover. And so I can ask it something like, explain winter tire markings to me. As a designer, I didn't include any intents, again, about the winter tire markings, but the bot did a check of its documents, and it actually found the answer for me embedded in the dense PDF. And so the results include a passage directly from the document, and also a clickable screenshot of the PDF page where the passage actually came from. And there's some navigation buttons as well in case, the content kind of wraps to the next page. Okay, so I'm satisfied with this first version of the bot, and I'll go to the deploy page and deploy my first version. And so I can name it really anything and add a note to it. Let's just say the classic hello world note, and deploy. Here we go. Now the version that I just deployed can be accessed anywhere that has this HTML code embedded in it. And so the HTML code is right over here. It's a 2-liner script tags. And whenever you put it into any HTML document, the widget will show up just like how it does here in this page. And we also have a link where it's just simulating a production environment where we have this page pretty blank, but then of course the widget at the bottom right. And also, if there is a custom front-end client that you want to use instead of the default widget, then you can reference Rulai's dialog API to make REST API calls to send and receive messages to and from the backend. So yeah, here's the page where our API lives. Otherwise, you could also customize the default widget with different colors and logos and the like. And so in about 10 minutes, I've built a virtual assistant from scratch, showing data ingestion, intent creation, agent handoff, and deployment. Hopefully this helps provide a bit of context and a good reference for you.